Well, howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today we're gonna play with UnRaid again. You know we got our UnRaid server built a week or so ago, and Jerry was hard at work doing that, helping me with that. And we put it into that 4U rat case. Well, I've got other plans for that 4U rat case, so it's time to do UnRaid again. So any of you keeping track of my UnRaid build know that this machine is UnRaid-Beast, and I want to talk to you about some issues I had with it. It's now stable. This is the one I built using the older Gigabyte motherboard with the Intel i7 processor I got off of eBay. I'll move the camera over here just a little bit so you can get a little bit better in frame. It's running great. It's stable. I've been able to get VMs running on it. I've been able to figure out how to do the hard drives on it, etc. The problem is that I wanted to take my old AMD Gigabyte AB350 Gaming 3 motherboard and I wanted to use it in UnRaid. The problem was I couldn't get it stable. This is the board I'm talking about. I'll bring it over here. So there it is. That's the Gigabyte AB350 Gaming 3 motherboard. And it has 16 gig of RAM. It has AMD Ryzen 5 1600, 1500 processor on it. The 6-core 12-thread. It has 3 PCI Express slots, 16x size, but this is 16. These are 4, and this is 4. And then it has a smaller PCI Express slot on it. USB 3 has built-in networking, everything except for onboard video. And you know I want to run VMs on here with video pass-through. The problem was I could never get IOMMU to work, to be stable with this motherboard. I've done a lot of research on it. I looked up the last thing that I looked up that I didn't try before I tore this thing out and started from scratch was C states. There is some word in the UnRaid forums to disable C states on here. I'm not saying that UnRaid won't run on Ryzen, but in my case, I could not get it to run on this board stably. It would lock up. The IOMMU would sometimes work, sometimes it wouldn't. I tried all derivations. I finally got tired of working with it and just went back to what I had. So the problem I have now is, now that I understand how UnRaid works, let me open the cover on this. I realize that UnRaid is not something I want sitting in my server rack, but my UnRaid server is actually something that I want sitting running on the bench. One benefit of this Gigabyte motherboard using this i7 processor, if you remember this build, you'll notice I have 2 video cards in here. I have an NVIDIA GTX 650 and I have an MSI Radeon RX 570, I believe, 570 or 560 card. And they're both working great. But in addition to that, this motherboard and this processor, this i7 CPU also has a GPU built into it. So the benefit of using this board is I get 3 actual video cards. So I can assign the video card that's on the CPU to UnRaid, strictly to UnRaid, and then these 2 cards can be passed through to either a Windows 10 virtual machine, a Macintosh, a Mac virtual machine, or whatever. So it doesn't make any sense to put this unit in the rack. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to transfer all these components out of here with the exception of the hard drive bays. They're going to stay because they're a pain in the ass to get out. And I'm going to move everything over to this unit that I've had laying around. This is an old Alaska case. I don't know if y'all have ever dealt with Alaska cases, but they work great. And then what I'm going to do is this motherboard that's in here right now is the Super Micro motherboard that we had Zeus running on, if you remember Zeus back in the day, a few weeks ago I should say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gut this unit. I'm going to take this motherboard, I'm going to put it in to the 4U rack unit, and then I'm going to take all the components out of the 4U rack and put them in here, and then we're going to switch out the hard drives. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to swap all the components out, and then this unit will then stay on the bench to use as a bench unit using UnRaid. That way I have storage available to it, and I can play around with that, and I can run virtual machines on it on the bench and actually put it through its paces and actually use the damn thing as a workstation as well. Now, the other thing I'd like to show you is the power usage on this UnRaid server. And I don't know if you can see it, how well you can see it, but it's only consuming about 60 watts just sitting there at idle. And I do have the hard drive set so they spin down. They save a little bit of power that way. So, like I said, today what we'll focus on is getting all the parts moved over. This thing is built like a tank. I mean, you go to lift this thing, you go to lift this computer off the ground, just from the weight of this alone, it probably adds, I don't know, quite a bit of weight to it. But they work really well. So I definitely have my task cut out for me today, but I think I'm up to the challenge. Well, she's big, she's tall, and she's ugly. And no, I'm not talking about my wife. This is the UnRaid-Beast in its new home, and yeah, it's crammed in there. Let me get some light on the subject. Use a flashlight. Let's see what happens. Let's do it the cheap way, the camera footage. So there it is. Here's the i7 processor. This is the Gigabyte GAZ77DH DS3H. As promised, it's got the 2 video cards in there. There's the GTX 650 here. There's the MSI Radeon RX 570 there. I've got this unit has 5 onboard serial ATA ports. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 5. 2 of them are serial ATA 3 spec, and 2 of them are serial ATA 2, but that's okay. I've got really old hard drives in here. I've got 24 gig of memory in it, 450 watt power supply. It's all built now. I've also put a 1 terabyte SSD in here. That's my cache drive. And then I have 4 2 terabyte drives in this drive bay housing. It's a Mediasonic HT 31304. There it is. And yeah, it works. Now, I don't use either the CD-ROM or the floppy drive. They're just there to fill the holes because I don't have blanks for this. So here's the drive bay. It's lockable. As you can see, I've got my Seagate 2 terabyte hard drives in there. So if you know anything about me, you know I'm a big fan of these 4 by 3.5 inch mobile drive bays, drive bay adapters. They make so much sense, and I'm the king of cheap, so price is what drives me to purchase something. And I ran across this Mediasonic, and I'm glad I did. It's really good quality. It's a $70 drive bay adapter, and we put it to good use, as you can see. The chassis is metal, the drive trays are metal. It's well built. It's easy to mount the drives in there. Basically they screw in from the bottom, not the sides, and they have a little key. Here's the back of it. It uses the Molex power adapters, so you'll get some use out of your Molex adapters. And here's all the product that comes in the box. And so that's what we went with on my UnRaid server, just so I could make it easy to remove the hard drives and replace them if necessary. Let's fire this bad boy up. And you know, I've noticed, and if you listen closely, you'll hear the unit firing up, or maybe not. There's the BIOS screen. Now, can you hear this? I'm going to stand over by the machine. A lot of times in these videos, they don't tell you that if you're going to use UnRaid, probably like I'm doing on a workstation or on my workbench, I'd be best to boot into GUI mode. Now, most people just boot into UnRaid OS, and one thing I never understood while watching some of these UnRaid videos is how they got a GUI on the actual physical machine. How did they run a gaming machine on the actual UnRaid, and didn't put two and two together until about a week ago and realized that you could run UnRaid operating system in GUI mode. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to hit enter here. What this allows me to do on the bench is then to run, if I want to run my Hackintosh virtual machine, if I want to run a Windows 10 virtual machine or a Windows 7 virtual machine, I have the ability to do that right here. And I'm going to try and pull focus on this a little bit better. Is to actually run a workstation OS in addition to having UnRaid store some data for me. So I wanted to show this to everybody because on a lot of these videos, like I say, for setting up UnRaid, they don't show you this part of how to get UnRaid to run locally. I guess they just assume you're smart and you know that you can do that, and that's what the GUI mode is there for. So, and I'm always hesitant to try new stuff. I'm going to turn down the light here and see how this looks. All right, so there we are on the UnRaid screen. Now, it's prompting you for a username. I don't know how well you can see this. Let me zoom in just a little bit. Type in my username and my password. Mind you, I'm doing this in the dark so that y'all can get a good picture. And then there's the very common, normal UnRaid interface. And as you can see, I've got some actual data out on there, etc., etc. And I'm sorry if the screen's a little bloomy or a little overexposed. I really don't know what I'm doing with this camera. This is that Canon camera I'm using. But if I come over here to VMs, I've got High Sierra and I've got Mojave both. I'm using the Mac in a Box virtual machine creator from Space Invader 1. And so I'm just going to boot into, I'm going to go ahead and turn on Mac High Sierra, and then I'm going to go into a VNC remote session. And I do need to do something over here. Bear with me. Gotta find my mouse. We'll let it boot up. What I'm going to have to do is change the screen. Now I've got all of my VMs so that they boot off of the SSD drive. I have a 1 terabyte SSD drive in here. So if you were booting this off a normal spinning Rust or off your array, you're not going to see the speeds that I see. I don't know what happened to my mouse. Oh, there it is. One thing I do need to do is come over here, and I have to go to settings and put it in local scaling in order for the screen to line up correctly. You don't know why that is. It could be because I am not using one of the internal or one of the video cards. I'm only actually using the VNC remote and the native video card. But there you go. There's Apple Mac OS 10 running. I mean, what can I tell you? That's just the way to do it. It works great. I can do that also with a Windows 10 virtual machine, etc. What I'm going to do right now, we are on UnRaid-Beast, and I'm going to flip the monitor over here in a second and show you what it is I'm going to do. So right now, the way I have UnRaid configured, come over here to main, or come over here to, yeah, to main. You'll see that on my shares, like on my video share, I tell it use cache disk yes. And what that means is, if you tell it yes, it indicates that all new files and subdirectories should be written to the cache disk pool, provided enough free space exists on the cache disk pool. I have a 1 terabyte cache disk that also hosts my domains, which is the vernacular for virtual machines on UnRaid. So not only am I storing them there, but I'm using this cache drive so that we have faster copy speeds. So if I come back to main, you'll see my cache drive is relatively, empty, and my drives up here are actually starting to, my 1 terabyte drives or 2 terabyte drives are actually starting to fill up here with data. So what I like to do now is to copy some data over to UnRaid. Alright, so over on the left-hand side, I have my Xpenology NAS that is running virtually under VMware and all. I'm doing a video about that again. I've done it before, but I'm doing an updated video on that. But yes, I am running a Xpenology NAS under VMware on that Dell R710. And in that folder, this machine also has a 10 gig connection. UnRaid-Beast is over here on the right. It only has a 1 gigabit connection. I know, probably not an apples to apples comparison, but so I'm going to come over to Unky Joe's Playhouse over here on the SAN, and then as you can see over here on UnRaid-Beast, there is no folder. So what I'm gonna do first is copy the edits, because there are a lot of files in edits, and it ought to fill up that NAS pretty quickly. So, or that cache drive, I should restate, pretty quickly. So I'm just gonna drag it and drop it and tell it to copy, and it'll go out and it'll calculate, and then it'll start actually transferring the data. And there we are. We should be up to about, we should get up to 100 megabytes per second, maybe not. But these files are, you know, pretty good size. So I'm getting it almost 100 megabytes per second. Now, if I flip over to UnRaid using that cache drive, and you can see it is writing to the cache drive. If you look right here, you can see the data is being written to the cache drive. But we're just not getting a huge amount of throughput. This is less than I get natively with Windows with 1 gigabit connections. Now those speeds are they're kind of acceptable, but you know, there's always a thing when you know you can do better. You wish you could, but I want to show you something interesting. I'm gonna stop the copy in process, and let's go back to UnRaid-Beast, and let's go back to our shares, and let's go to video. And I'm going to tell it use cache disk on the video. I'm going to tell it no. And I'm going to apply. And I'm going to tell it done. So now I've told it don't write to the cache disk, write directly to the array. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start that copy again. And we're going to see how it affects our transfer speeds. Now, mind you, there's no writes being done on the SSD or any of the other drives right now, so take note of these numbers. And we'll come back here and we'll copy again to edits. Now, I have set the drives to spin up and spin down to go into power saving mode when they need to. So still, the speeds aren't too bad. Let's go see if it's actually writing to the array or if it's writing to the cache drive. Okay, so it's writing to one of the spinning disks. As you can see, all the disks have spun up. Okay, I was a little confused there. So let's come back. So you can see in my case, writing to the cache drive versus writing to the array, I get about the same amount of speed as I would. And I'll go ahead and give you a clue as to what this is. I believe that Gigabyte motherboard has a Realtek NIC in there. And if you've ever dealt with, especially, it seems Linux are more sensitive to these Realtek cards than Windows is. With Windows, I typically get really good performance out of these Realtek NICs. But for some reason, Linux just does not care for the driver, or the driver has not been optimized for Linux-based systems. But you know, these drive speeds are not too bad, considering these are spinning Rust drives, and they're only running at serial ATA level 2, not 3, because this motherboard only has 2 serial ATA 3 ports on it. The other 4 are serial ATA 2. But I just wanted you to see the copy speeds you can expect to see with UnRaid, especially if you have a Realtek NIC in UnRaid. I guess what I'm alluding to is I'm not going to let this transfer speed bother me. As you can see, I've copied a buttload of data over to this server already to get Plex to work and do some other experiments. But I just wanted you to see the kind of progress I'm making with UnRaid. Now, also along the same lines, as I said earlier, I've also got Plex running in here as a Docker container. You can see it's up and running now. I started it. And I'm going to be putting MB on here as well because I want to do some testing. I want to see how Plex and MB run really well under Windows, but I want to see how they run as a virtual machine under UnRaid using the NVIDIA card passing through. I know you can do it for Plex. I don't know that you can do it for MB. And again, I wait for guys that are smarter than I am, namely Space Invader 1, to do a video about that, and then I learn from it. But I'm going to try some experimentation. I just want to see for myself how it performs on RAID. As you know, we just did some really big changes to our rack, and we've got everything settled the way we want on our rack, and that's why UnRaid is back here. Now, real quickly, let's go over what I have in this UnRaid server, because with all my rack changes and everything, you probably can't even keep track of, I can't even keep track of where I've had my drives. So these are the Seagate 2 terabyte drives that I've had for years. In fact, they just came out of the machine called Home NAS. As I told you in my rack video for 2020, my Home NAS is no more. I just don't, I don't need to dedicate that equipment to it. So I took those drives out of there and I put them in this new UnRaid build. So that's the 4 2 terabyte drives. And then the SanDisk Ultra cache drive, the 1 terabyte, is the one that Sasha donated to us over a year ago. So I just wanted you to see the hardware that's in there. The other thing I've done under VM Manager is I have set my PCI ACS override to downstream. That seemed to be what worked best with this motherboard. And if you come up here to System Devices, you will see that not only do I have my NVIDIA GeForce GTX 650, I also have my AMD Radeon RX 550, and I also have my right here second, third gen core processor graphics controller. So not only do I have 2 PCI Express video cards, but I have the onboard, the one built onto the i7 processor as well, and that is an i7 3770 CPU. Thank you so much for your patience in this video. My ADHD really set in on this one. Look, I've been working on this video since the 16th of November. Here we are in the month of December, and I'm just getting the video done, and it's because I've changed my mind so damn many times. But like I said in my rack video, I am committed to moving forward with this setup we have now. I'm not going to be changing the base operating system of any of this hardware I have in here right now. So UnRaid is here to stay with the equipment it has in it. Now, we may change out that network card, but I really think it's more trouble than it's worth to see a few megabytes of speed improvement. I'm just not going to let it bother me or worry me. In fact, I don't even know why I'm covering it on the video. I just want to show you that it's been my experience that with the Realtek network cards, they work better under Windows than they do under Linux. And we'll just leave it at that. How's that sound? But UnRaid is great. You know, that new plugin or new app from Space Invader 1, Mac in a Box. Man, get your hands on that if you've ever wanted to do a virtual Mac. That was one of the reasons, one of the things that turned me on to UnRaid was all this wonderful stuff that Space Invader 1's been doing with his UnRaid setup. I said, I wanted to emulate that here. I wanted to do it here. So that's what we're attempting to do. And as a side note, it's going to make a very handy bench unit. As you can see right behind me, it's up and running on the bench. So we hope you found the video entertaining and informative. As always, please give us a thumbs up down below if you liked the video. Leave your comments down in the comments section. Folks, I'm getting busier and busier as time goes on. I've got a couple of clients that just got some major influxes of cash, and they're spending a ton of money with me to get their systems up to date. So my time is going to be very, very precious, and the holidays are closing in. So please don't be insulted and don't get your feelings hurt if I don't reply to your comments. I'm replying to as many as I can with the time I have. So I do appreciate each and every one of you. Donate if you're so inclined. We take PayPal. We take Patreon. or a good old check in the mail will work as well. Or if you want to buy me some exciting new toys. No, I'm just kidding. I'll let you know if we need any funds to buy any stuff. And right now we're trying to buy a Dell R720 server to do some fun stuff, because that Dell R720 allows you to put video cards into it. So that would be nice to replace that IBM with another Dell, right? Sorry, Morton. I love Dell. I love Dells. Just do. Anyway, come back and see us again real soon. And don't forget that we will see you on the other side.